This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, sounds like we got the stream up and running. So welcome everyone to the Citizens Participation Committee for September 10th. We'll go ahead and get started with the roll call. So looks like we got Stuart Frescus,
Present.
Nick Harvey,
Yeah.
Steve Clevenger,
Present.
and Amy Kristen Presson.
Yes, here.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. So the first item on our agenda would be approval of the past minutes. So I would take a motion for that unless there are some corrections or discussion needed.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And we would need a second.
Second.
And a second from Amy. Okay. With a motion and a second, I will take a roll call vote to approve the minutes. Stuart Frescus,
Yes.
Nick Harvey,
I didn't read them, but I'll approve it anyway.
okay. Steve Clevenger,
Present. Or yes, sorry.
yeah, and Amy Kristen Presson.
Yes.
All right, so with that, the minutes are approved. So that can get us into the program for tonight, which we're very excited to turn it over to our senior planner, Doug Pode, to unveil our thoroughfare plan. So I'm going to hand it off to Doug and see if I can get this plan up on the screen for you guys.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tim. Tonight, I'm excited to present to you our draft thoroughfare plan. It's been in the works for some time right now, and we have a draft, and it has been going through the review process. I'll go over the persons and agencies who we have been presenting it to later on in the presentation, but as you can see on our screen is the cover for the draft plan. If you're more curious about it and would like to see it, it is actually up on the APC website. So if you would like to, after the meeting, or sometime at your leisure, please look through it, and I'll go ahead and jump in. So as you may or may not know, Tippecanoe County has a comprehensive plan, and it is or covers the city of Lafayette, the city of West Lafayette, the towns of Battleground, Dayton, Clarks Hill, and Tippecanoe County. It does not include the town of Otterburn, and it does not include the town of Shadeland. With the comprehensive plan for the county, generally, the plan is adopted by all of these local jurisdictions, the 3 towns, the 2 cities, and the county. So all of the rules and regulations are similar pretty much throughout the county. Now, basically, most of us already know the 2 parts, the major parts for the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. Those are basically the 2 ones that most people recognize and work with. The 2 other ones that we work specifically in the transportation department, the first one is our long-range transportation plan, or what is now called the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. We update those every 5 years. And the other one that a few people know about is the thoroughfare plan. So, unfortunately, the sad news is that the plan that is currently in effect right now, it was actually the one that was adopted in 1981. And we had 2 efforts to update that earlier, but for various reasons, they did not move forward, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just didn't happen. And now I think we're ready to cross the finish line here in the next 3, 4, 5 months. So we're pretty excited with this effort. So what is exactly the thoroughfare plan? Well, it pretty much spells out the road design standards for all of those agencies who have adopted the comprehensive plan. And hopefully, when we come down to the end, the agencies, the towns, the cities, and county will adopt this, and then it will be in effect for all of these jurisdictions. So basically, in order to decide or discern what the road design standard one would use, whether it be in the town, city, or county, the current plan basically has you walk through several steps. One is that you need to look to see if it's in the urban area and whether it be a urban design or rural design, hence look at the urban area, and then determine the cross section of the road and right of way, and that is determined by what we call functional classification. And with those two pieces of information, we have one table, and it's both in the current thoroughfare plan and actually in the subdivision ordinance, that then spells out what exactly the right of way, the road width, and certain design elements of each road will be. So, fairly simple process, two steps, one table. So, with this update, we tried to keep it fairly similar. However, we did add additional steps to it. And the one big change that we made with this plan is that instead of just focusing or mostly focusing on vehicular traffic or the roads, we actually are focusing on multi modal traffic. So not only are we including the vehicular movements, we're also including pedestrians, we're also including cyclists and transit. So whenever we start thinking now with this plan, instead of just focusing on roads, we need to focus on the entire picture of how people move through the corridor, depending on what mode they transfer or will use. So this is an exciting step. Now, I will have to back up for a minute in that the county does have a complete street policy, and that was adopted through our 2040 long range plan back in 2012. But it only applies to road improvements or new roads that are going to be constructed and use our federal gas tax funds. So, with this effort, we are broadening that out. So, any road improvements by the local government agencies, whether they be done with federal funds or local funds or a combination, they all must be complete street compliant. And this also extends to private road or roads that are being built by the private sector that will eventually become public roads. Those must as well be complete street compliant. So, and if we think of complete street compliance, it's not one size fits all. Um, the actual policy, if you look at it, it can vary depending on where you're at, especially with the topography and if there's any differences. So, one complete street road in one section of town may look completely different than another section in another part of town. So, it's very flexible, and there is a means that if it's just not doable, that, for example, the topography won't allow it, there is a process to bring it out so they can move it forward. So that's one good news. And there's several other components that we focused on in this um, plan as well. One is sidewalks. Now, in terms of when subdivisions are built, all the internal streets are complete street compliant and do have sidewalks. Well, with this, there are a couple issues that came to the forefront, and we decided that it's time that when a subdivision, whether it be residential or commercial, comes forward, that sidewalks now must be constructed along the perimeter streets. So the first one is our agency conducted a road safety audit for McCutcheon High School and the elementary school nearby. And then we also conducted another road safety audit for Harrison High School and the elementary and middle school nearby. Specifically for the McCutcheon area, there were students, even though they couldn't walk or technically walk, they were getting hit walking to school. So we did what we call a road safety audit, found that there were safety issues for the children going to school, whether it be the high school or the elementary school. And we proposed a number of solutions to that. And if you've been out there recently, you will see the landscape has changed for both roads. There are pedestrian crossings for both schools, hawk signals. So we've addressed the safety issue at those two schools. Now, conversely, with the Harrison High School and the other two schools, the county is actually moving forward with improvements. And not only are they improving trails and sidewalks in that area, they're improving drainage because they're adding those elements, and then also the intersection. So that project is still in its infancy, but right now they're thinking that that may be constructed in 2029 or 2030. But the cost of that project is around $20 million, so it's fairly substantial. Now, the other issue that has prompted this is that you probably heard of a bus driver shortage, especially with TSC, and them recently going from a 2 start time period to now a 4 start time period, so they can run their buses with fewer drivers. So, in addition to that, they also looked at where children or the school children can actually walk to school. There are areas in a certain radius that the infrastructure is there where children can walk to school, just like you would for Lafayette and West Lafayette. And they did a comprehensive study, and certain areas within the county, if that infrastructure is there, bus service will no longer be provided, and the children will need to walk to school. So between these two issues, um, we felt it's time that when a subdivision is constructed, that not only just we focus on the internal, but we also on focus on what's on the outside of it. So, for example, along 600 North in that area near Harrison High School, if the subdivisions would have constructed, whether it be a trail or sidewalk, the project that is moving forward would have not been so substantial as to what it is right now. So that's the reason why we are now asking for this. Another thing is that for transit service, there are a lot of bus stops that do not connect to sidewalks, even with the changing of the routes. So we put a heavier emphasis on transit service. So when developers come in, need to speak with representatives from City Bus. And if they're on bus lines, or if there will be bus lines or service there shortly, then we are going to ask developers to put in bus stops that are appropriate for the development. And then not only the bus stops, but connections from the development to the bus stops. So basically, we're addressing what we call the first last mile, in that for a transit trip, a person who is going to ride transit actually is a pedestrian and walks from the bus stop to to the bus stop. So we're focusing on that as well. Another thing we're doing is focusing on ADA standards. Again, it's federal law. I know of recent, there's been a number of ramps constructed that are not ADA compliant. So this is another reminder that, these ramps must be ADA compliant. So any questions so far?
Doug, this is Steve.
Yes,
Does
Steve.
this include, from the road into like a commercial development, like a restaurant or store, so that there's a sidewalk rather than just having a sidewalk along the road, along the road, and then a sidewalk around the store for those that drive, but an actual pedestrian path that goes into the commercial site.
You are correct, Steve. We will be asking for those. So, for example, within the recent developments that are occurring, we have asked for connections from like trails or sidewalks to basically the front door. So, yes, there is a lot of vehicular traffic moving within the development, but we need to see that connection. So, we are moving to actually ask developers put those in.
Great. There's a lot of places where you can walk along the main road, and then
Hmm.
you've got to walk through. I mean, with incoming and outgoing traffic in the entrance, because there's no sidewalk, through that grass median,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
get into the parking lot,
Hmm.
and then up to
Hmm.
the front door.
Exactly. And with this, we are hoping to change that environment so people who would prefer to walk or even ride their bicycle to the store can do it safely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, going on. Now I'm going to focus on getting back. So I mentioned earlier, basically in the current plan, there's a two-step process. This process in this plan is a little more time consuming. There's a few more steps that are added. And the first one, again, just like the current one, is whether we need to see if the road, whether it be reconstruction or new, is going to be an urban design and a rural design. And for example, you see on your screen the area, what we call the urban development boundary. Now, currently, we are using the census boundary, and the census defines its urban area by a percentage of population already living there. So we felt that if we still continued to use the census, we would be behind the eight ball in terms of development to require urban designed roads. So what we decided to do is look at areas that will become sewered and have water in the next 25 to 30 years. And we developed this area as you see here on the screen. Everything within that dashed line will have a road of an urban design, and everything outside of that will be a rural design. So, again, step number one is the same. Another thing that we added with this is that, say, for example, when we update our long range plan, we see growth on the suburban bridge fringe that's further out. When that long range plan is adopted, this map will automatically add to the urban development boundary that additional growth area to incorporate our proposed improvements. And if, for example, the census in the next, saying 2030 census comes out and that boundary has some areas that extend beyond this, those will automatically be incorporated. We put that in here because, it would, if we had to do it through an amendment, it would take staff time and going through the entire process. So we decided that it's time that if these events occur, the thoroughfare plan will be automatically updated. So we went to go ahead and do that right now and let everybody know that that's what's going to happen if these two events occur. So the next step in looking at a road, whether and its design particularly, is basically the same as the second step, and that is looking at functional classification. Tim has up here the roads that are classified in the urban development boundary. These would be urban. And um, the current plan uses a very, very old classification. Yeah, it was popular back in the 70s and 80s. But it's been many years. The Federal Highway Administration actually adopted a nationwide classification system, and we're actually moving to that. So the classification of these roads are based on the Federal Highway Administration classification. All of the other thoroughfare plans within Indiana use this standard. So it's time that we update and follow everybody else. And actually, this makes it a lot easier in our office because there's times, especially when the transportation staff is having to figure out, like right now, which classification system is a person referring to. So this is going to be great for us. So excited that, we're actually going to be using this. And likewise with the urban development boundary, if we have any changes, for example, with classification changes, this will automatically be updated. We are going through the whole entire process right now. This usually happens after every decennial census. We are coming to the conclusion of that, and the classifications here pretty much mirror what we are looking at, that NDOT will adopt and the Federal Highway Administration will adopt. So we're basically, step 2, same thing, we're updating that. So
Doug,
yes.
on your previous map where you outline the urban area,
Yes.
you have County Road 500 West labeled as County Road 500 East.
Oh, okay.
At least I
We'll
believe
make,
that's 500 West.
uh, I'll make a note and we will fix that. Thank you for
Yeah, it
pointing
looks
that
like it's
out.
500 West. Yeah.
I have that noted here and we will correct that. Thank you.
Hey Doug, this is
Yes.
Green. So if a large residential development was going to be developed outside of that urban developed boundary, then all the urban road develop or road rules go out the window.
Yes, but see, that is very highly unlikely because um, with our subdivision ordinance, a large subdivision, if they develop, they have to have water and sewer. You cannot have a large subdivision that's outside in the county and it relies solely on wells and septic systems. That answer your question?
Okay, yeah. So Lafayette or West Lafayette couldn't shoot water or sewer out to them to do that.
It's highly unlikely. The um, the area to the south, you see, it's quite extensive, and it goes to basically to 800 South. This takes into account their development area, 11B, and it's fairly substantial. I know right now they have been installing both water and sewer lines and extending it out. Um, for their long range plan, they do plan to go further out, but basically 800 South is the the line which at this point in time they're not planning on crossing. On the east side, Lafayette, basically the big obstacle is the creek in terms of crossing it. That's basically a natural boundary. And then for West Lafayette, basically it's American Suburban who provides all of the utilities on the west and north side. And this was drawn from what they expect to serve in the next 20, 25 years. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. hmm hmm Okay, I'll jump back here. So we have step 1 and step 2 are the same. So we have a third step that, for example, if the development or area, which will be in the urban area, we have focused on minimizing right of way. So, for example, roads that allow parking either on one side or two sides will need additional road width and additional right of way. But roads that do not have parking don't need that additional 16 feet. So the next step is if project or road or whatever is in the urban area, they look at this map and this shows streets that no parking is allowed. So the right of way for these streets that are highlighted in green will be narrower. The road width will be narrower because building a road and having a wide right of way width, having all that is additional cost. And this is one way that we thought we could try to minimize the costs in building roads and having right of way. So step 3 would be, if it's in the urban area, we would look at this map to see if it's no parking or with parking. The next step is actually focused on basically trails and bike lanes. For example, we feel it's very important that when developing or redeveloping roads that we need to include trails. So we have a map that specifically shows proposed and existing trails. And all of these, yes, there's a lot of lines in it. It's a spaghetti map, but all of these are actually either in the ground or proposed in various plans, whether it be our long-range transportation plan, the Lafayette plan, the West Lafayette plan, battleground plan. So that's one thing we also need to take into account. The other element that we need to take into account are bike lanes. Bike lanes are not as prevalent as trails. Here we have a map that shows basically existing and then also proposed. So, basically, we also have to look at these elements to decide what would be the specific design standard. Earlier, I mentioned there were 3 maps that had designs for the roads. We now have 3. If you could go to the first one, Tim, please. For the urban area, we have 2 tables. One that basically addresses with parking, and the other addresses without parking. They're pretty much similar. And as you can see on the left, you have the urban section, the classifications, and then we have some rather interesting information like minimum lane width, curb and gutter width, sidewalk width, tree lawn width. But in addition to that, we also have these 4 columns, and we color coded them. In the light blue are roads without bike lanes or trails. The next column is a road that has just a bike lane. The next column in purple is roads with only a trail. And then the last column to the far right is if you have both. So in other words, again, we're focusing on being multimodal. We want to incorporate trails. We want to incorporate bike lanes. So we have all of these here design standards. So you need to look at the maps with bike lanes, trails, and then you can pick out the specific color code, and then come down to the classification, and boom, the information is right there. So similar to the urban area, if you go to the next one, the rural standards, the map you have there. Now we have roads without trail and roads with a trail because we do identify trails in the rural area along a rural road. So again, thinking about being multimodal, we have that taken into account.
Yeah.
So yes, Steve.
How do you handle the situation where you have like existing roads that are being, uh, potentially being redone, but then they have sidewalks on both sides rather than, there's no room for a trail. Do you have like a right of way width for that, or where does that fit in?
Well, if it doesn't have if there's no trail or no bike lane, generally the minimum pavement width you see assumes that there's sidewalks on both sides. Now, one thing we have put in here is that we realize there will be certain situations, as you pointed out, Steve, where it may not be feasible to have a full design like we would. So the engineer, whether it be the cities, the towns, the county, has the ability to waive these requirements and actually change them. So, we tried to make it, you know, um, not strict. This is what it is in stone, because we do, as you pointed out, there will be situations where it's just not feasible to do what we would like to see. So, does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Steve?
yeah. So the right of way width includes sidewalks on both sides, which makes
Yes.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey Doug, this is Jane again.
Yes, Gene.
Um, so on the parking, um, are there currently residential streets with no parking on either side?
Generally,
Because that means if you have visitors or whatnot, they have no place to park.
right. In our recommendation here for local roads, residential specifically, we have calculated parking on both sides. Now, we realize that within certain subdivisions, that developers would like to have only parking on one side or no parking at all. And again, that would be up to say, for example, if it was in the county engineer would have to review that. And if he finds it's okay, he would allow it. But if he doesn't, then he will, say you have to put the parking in. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So we've gone over this. There's quite a bit going on here. In the very back, in the current table, there are a lot of design standards that engineers use. Tim has this shown. We do include all of those design standards. There's a lot in there. It's still very important. I know the general public usually would look at this and go, what is this? What does this mean? These are usually only used by engineers who are designing or actually reviewing the product, reviewing the design standards. We also have some information there about cul-de-sacs, hammerheads, turnarounds. An issue that we've seen come up recently is and this applies to, and this we've seen it in older subdivisions where a subdivision is built and it has a road that would connect to the farm field that in the future would be developed into a subdivision. While with this, we wanted to make sure that they put something in, and generally it's a hammerhead, so that vehicles actually can turn around, because in the past, unfortunately, some subdivisions were built without that and it's been causing issues. So we wanted to make that fairly clear in this report that, with those roads that will eventually connect to future subdivisions, they do have to put in some kind of temporary measure, and it may be temporary as in 10, 15 years, something so that vehicles can safely turn around. Other things that we included in here, if you scroll down a little bit more, Tim, we've included here, you see on-street loading zone standards. We had a discussion on that. That seemed to be in our last effort, um, um, something that people wanted. Another thing that we've added here that's new is location of driveways near intersections. Again, this is basically for safety. That we have seen subdivisions come in or developments that want driveways too close to an intersection. And basically, we can't have that. We want people to travel safely. And again, it creates, a safety hazard. So we pull this information from Federal Highway Administration so that, when somebody comes in for a development, well, this is one thing we'll check. And then we have some other things included in here. The one thing that I will point out, yes, we do have the FHWA definitions for functional classification. The one thing that we haven't put in yet, and we did this intentionally at the very end, what would be Appendix B, as Tim has here, are basically the pictures of what a cross section would look at for all these different designs. When we rolling this out and putting it together, yeah, we could have spent the time and do this and have it already done, but we decided we weren't sure in terms of what kind of feedback we would be getting or how many changes we would be getting. So at this point, we decided because we're going to hire this out, I can draw it, but it would take forever to do it. So we decided that when this report is adopted and becomes part of the comprehensive plan, we will go back and hire a firm to actually draw up all the cross sections and then include them in here. So that's one thing that still needs to be done, but we're listening to people. We want public comment. We're waiting for feedback. So if there's any changes, we can make those. So basically, that's the whole entire draft thoroughfare plan in a nutshell. Any comments or questions?
This is Steve again. You need to check all your maps with that 500 East. It's
Oh, okay.
places.
Okay.
Also, any thought to a requirement to have no parking signs on the hammerhead
Uh,
turnarounds?
um, Usually, well, that's a good point. Usually, we don't get down into the weeds in that detail.
It just, I know I've seen a number of them where there are cars parked in them.
Generally on signage, um, that is handled when the development comes through or is in the process. It's generally the local engineer, whether it be the city or county, they're the ones that will specify signage and where it goes. So as you know, here we don't have any specifications for like the number of signs for like speed
Right.
or whatnot. So generally, that's handled in terms of by the local engineer.
Okay.
Stuart Frescas here. Thank you, Doug, for your hard and very comprehensive work. Yeah, I am excited to take a look at this because
Hmm.
it seems to treat a lot of issues that have run through my mind, as I cycle around in
Hmm. Hmm.
Tippecanoe County. Thank you.
Hmm. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And looking forward if you review it. If you have any comments, please pass them along.
Hey, Doug, this is Amy.
Yes.
I'm wondering if this plan gets into anything other than just a stripe on the road to separate bike lanes from traffic, or is that more detail than you get into?
Um, right now in this plan, we did not specify a specific design, whether it be like a stripe or whether it be, like paint, as you mentioned, whether it be like those plastic tubes that come up, or whether it be, a like little barrier. Um, just we felt that in terms of if we requested a certain design or gave like a small menu of designs that we may come up with an issue like it would work here but not here. So we felt when we were putting this together that when we see these developments come in or when the city's county reconstructs a road and decides to put bike lanes in, they can actually look to see what would be the most appropriate means of determining, or separating the two. Does that
Thanks.
answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Doug, are there any provisions for, I think we call them sharrows, where you have the bike and the car traffic in the same lane?
We did not include that. I mean, when I was starting to think about putting this together, thinking about, well, if you have a sharrow, you could actually, widen the road maybe a pinch, like another foot or two. But then in terms of, because they're so easy to put in, and a big thing that was really thought of is that, and we hear this all the time from residents in local subdivisions, is that there's cars that are speeding. We also hear it on, roads that are lower classification. Cars are going too fast. And we recognize that the wider the pavement, even with the pavement markings down there for sharrows, you're running a greater risk for cars traveling faster because they feel they have more room. And that's been a really tough, you know, um, decision here in terms of we have people who are wanting narrower streets because they slow traffic down. And we actually then, had a really good discussion putting this together in terms of what should be the minimum lane width. And, on the lower classification roads, we started narrowing them down. And, they're not too narrow. We have a number of them that are narrow. But for example, the local road, the standard now is, basically if you look at it, we have a 13-foot wide one lane and then parking on both sides. Well, there is a chance, and we've seen it happen where cars are parked along both sides for like an event and only one car could pass. But for the majority of time, you don't have that situation. So basically, you have two lanes if a car's parked on one side. So, you know, it's really, and we had some really good discussion with our local emergency, especially fire departments, in terms of having a difficult time getting through. If cars are parked on both sides, yeah, they'd like to see the road wider. And we've had some really good discussion as like, okay, that does happen, but seems like it doesn't happen that much or that many times. And yeah, that will delay or possibly delay fire, time to get there. But then again, we're listening to people, local residents especially. We want, to slow traffic down. We want, 20, 25 mile an hour cars going 20, 25 miles an hour in our local subdivision. So it's basically a balancing game in terms of what do we, ask for. And, it's kind of interesting. We actually, really have been thinking about this and looking at other thoroughfare plans around the state. They don't even come close to even addressing this. So, we're going down even deeper than a lot of other thoroughfare plans.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking more of, where they might be allowed, I mean, in which
Hmm.
classifications and that, rather than the actual, pavement width. Because if you can add a couple of feet to the width of the road, to the lane width, then you can probably add a bike lane.
Yeah, and that's why we have, we're trying to be flexible. So,
Yeah.
hmm
I've got
okay,
some
Thanks. That looks good.
comments.
oh, okay. Just kind of give you an update here. So, this plan has been out for public comment. Basically, it's been looked at a lot. We've started out, going through, drafting it, doing, a lot of internal discussion, going through it, going over it. And then after we looked at it internally, then we had the city engineers, the county engineer, other officials actually go through it, review it. We've met them several times. After that, we then invited our APC commissioners if they wanted to know more information about that, one-on-one sit down with them. We actually presented it to both mayors and to the county commissioners, face to face and go through the entire thing like we're doing today. We did offer it to the towns of Battleground, Clarksville, and Dayton. And Dayton was the only town that actually wanted a presentation, and we did that. We've also presented it to the City Bus Board of Directors. As again, another thing that we did was that for this, we wanted to make it more one-on-one, where like we're doing now. Um, Sit down, talk with you, and if you have questions, we can answer them. We sent out personal invitations to engineering firms, survey firms, um, lots of individuals, different groups, and asked if you would like a sit down one-on-one meeting with us to know more about it and get your questions answered. Um, we'd be more than welcome to do that. We're going to send that out again because we only received actually a few um, takes on that. Again, we're presenting it this evening. We plan to present it to the ordinance committee, and that's comprised of the city and county and whatnot, and that will be done early November. And then we plan on presenting it to the Technical Transportation Committee and our policy board. And then after all of this, then start the adoption process and go through, present it to the Area Plan Commission. If they approve it, then we um, have it presented to all of the three towns, the two cities and county. And then if they all adopt it, we will record it, and then the plan will become official, and then of course we will get the cross sections put together. So that's our goal, or that's what we're thinking of in the future. Any other questions or comments I can help with?
Yeah. Hey, Doug. We
Yes.
have some public comments I'd like to read, please.
Okay, sure.
All right. So this is on YouTube from user I'm So Cringe, who says, quote, I think we should make the urban boundary smaller to prevent suburban sprawl and protect farmland.
Mm-hmm.
When the solar farm plan was introduced, one of the main arguments was that it would take up a lot of farmland. But I don't see anyone speaking up against car-oriented sprawl, misspelled, sorry, that takes up more space. Also, when bike lanes are installed, they should at minimum have a 2-foot buffer between them and the car lanes. No more gutter lanes that leave cyclists fearing for their life because cars are going by 2 feet away from their shoulder. If you go to DC or Philly, they have narrow streets and the fire trucks can get through fine. Ultimately, I think narrower is the better solution because 99% of the time it's better than wider. Unquote.
Okay. Well, for the urban development boundary, again, that's what we're looking at in terms of for the city in terms of extending their service out. They're already in the process of doing that. Now it's going to take some time to do it, but in terms of keeping it smaller and preventing urban development, generally, if subdivisions are built significantly a distance away from existing lines, then the developer themselves has to pay for the extension of sewer lines and water lines, which, if there's any distance, it can be fairly costly to do. So generally, it doesn't help prevent urban sprawl, but if you look at the most development we see, it's on the suburban fringe or where areas that the city and American Suburban can service. So I'm not sure if that answers that question. Regarding the buffer and gutter lanes, we will be seeing the city and county engineer next week. We have kind of like a meeting where we can talk about different things. We'll ask them about it, and then regarding, I think, narrower lanes, we did look at those in terms of lane widths and tried to come up with a very fairly balance between everything, with the needs, because one thing is fire trucks. Um, the newer ones are super wide, so yes, they don't use them all the time, but and yes, narrower lanes do promote slowing down traffic. So, you know, we did look at this when we were putting together what the lane widths were. So I hope those answer those questions, and if not, um, please feel free to ask some more. Okay, Aria, is that it?
That's all I have at this time. I'll let you know if
Oh,
any more come in.
okay, okay. Thank you for asking those. Any other comments or questions? Well, again, thank you for listening to the presentation here. If you do read through it and have any additional comments or questions, please feel free to, email me or email our office here, and we'll be more than glad, or even call, and we'll be more than glad to talk with you about those and answer your questions. Again, the draft document is actually on our website. So, again, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug, very much for that presentation. And I think we also had some really good questions. So thank you all on the committee for asking those. And also thank you to those who participated online and made some of those comments as well. We do appreciate those, and we will try our best to address those as much as we can with the final version of this plan. Like Doug said, we're still in the phase where we're collecting comments. So what you see tonight isn't final. We're still working through some things. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is general questions, comments, and suggestions. So I think we'll leave at least a minute for the stream to catch up if there's anything else. We want to make sure that we get everything. But does anyone on the committee have any questions, comments, or suggestions?
Yes, Tim, I do. I think I'm addressing something that Nick Harvey is interested in. I don't know who sets the rules for parking over at the Tippecanoe County Fair. Is that the purview of anyone here?
No, we as APC do not have any jurisdiction over that.
Okay, yeah. Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because they had a sign that said, it was posted outside the chain link, and it said, no firearms, no, skateboards, and no bicycles. And there was no provision for parking any bicycles, and Nick Harvey was turned back from because he went to the fair with his bicycle. He was turned back and wasn't able to go because there was no provision at all for cycle parking or anything. So, we'll see if we can find the appropriate. It just seemed like a strange thing to me. Anyway, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you bringing up that experience. Okay, have we gotten any other comments online, Aria?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, I think we've given everyone a fair opportunity to comment online and from the board. So with that, unless there's any final questions, comments, or suggestions, I would take a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So we have a motion from Steve. We would need a second.
Second, Deanna.
Second from Deanna. Nick, also, I did want to acknowledge that we saw your comment there that your internet connection is going in and out a little bit. So thank you for letting us know about that. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second to adjourn. So I will take a roll call for adjournment. Stuart Frescus.
Yeah, second. Yeah, yes.
Nick, we know you can't hear us very well, so we'll pass over to you. If you'd like to add something in the comments, go ahead. But Steve Clevenger.
Yes.
Amy Kristen Presson.
Yes.
Jim Croshan.
Yes.
And Deanna McMillan.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So with that, we will be adjourned. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. And I would just also like to point out that our next meeting will be December 10th. And that will be online. So we hope to see you guys there, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.